Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, I'm your host, Scott Carson. Excited to be here today. And I'm jacked up this morning to have our buddy Steve Olsher on, who is the Master of Reinvention. He's the host of two amazing podcasts and is just an absolute amazing figure in the marketing and podcast fields out there. He's the host of two amazing shows, Beyond Eight Figures podcast and Reinvention Radio. And so, hey, thanks for joining us this morning from the West Coast.
Yeah, Steve. Man, the sunny West Coast, man. There's something coming out of the sky this morning. I'm not sure what it is, but everybody's running for cover.
Well, as long as it's not the flames from up north there, you guys are good, right?
That's true. Actually, we need this to get all things considered. There you go.
Well, Steve, you've done a great job over the last few years and even beyond that of kind of.
I peaked a few years ago. You're right.
I don't think you've peaked yet. I think you've peaked. We all have peaks and valleys, right? We all go through ups and downs, and you've done an amazing job, kind of being truly the master of reinvention. You've been, they've written articles about you being able to help reinvent yourself and really kind of pivot in the industry. Why don't you take a second to share a little bit about your background with our listeners out there?
Yeah, man. So I think I really am the poster child for reinvention, and that's why the moniker that I've been using for about the past 10 years is America's reinvention expert, because I do help people reinvent their personal lives, help businesses reinvent their focus, their ability to monetize, generate revenue, et cetera. So yeah, man, I mean, geez, from an entrepreneurial perspective, at almost every pass, I think I've changed gears. I mean, from nightclubs and being a DJ to actually owning my own nightclub, to then getting involved in catalogs. And really early in the online space, we launched on CompuServe's electronic mall in '93. And then a fully functional e-commerce site that we built out in '95, which became liquor.com, like what you drink, in '98. And real estate development, man, developed over $50 million in property over about a dozen years or so. And then writing and speaking and coaching, podcasting, hosting live events like the one you joined us at, the New Media Summit. Man, I think I am definitely the personification of the word reinvention. Just, give me a minute and I'll find something else that piques my interest, right?
Right, exactly. Well, that's the reason we have you on here is you've done a great job of like pivoting and change and reinvent yourself, going with whatever, whatever the hot thing is, or maybe not the hot thing, but the thing that you can make the most amount of impact on. And we have so many of our listeners are going through some sort of reinvention. They're transitioning out of a job, or they're wanting to be more real estate entrepreneurs, or they're looking to leave something that they dislike to pursue a passion, or use real estate investing to help them fund their passions, or travel, or their retirement, things like that. Mm-hmm. And you've talked to so many amazing people, especially on Beyond Eight Figures podcast.
Yeah.
If you guys aren't listening to that show, it is such an awesome show. Why don't you share a little bit about the show before I ask you another question, Steve?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of shows. I've been doing Reinvention Radio since 2009, took a little bit of time off, and then back at it full-time since 2015. And full-time, of course, is just meaning I consistently put out episodes for Reinvention Radio. And on that show, we feature people who have reinvented their lives. Either they were doing X and now they're doing Z, or they're reinventing a particular industry or something of that nature. So lots of interesting folks join us on that show. And it runs the gamut. Every show's got a theme: reinventing fear, reinventing marketing, reinventing real estate. I mean, you name it, I think we've covered it over the years. Yeah. And Beyond Eight Figures is our newest show that we just launched not terribly long ago. And on that show, we exclusively sit down with entrepreneurs who have either exited for more than $10 million or currently run businesses that generate more than $10 million annually. So we've had people like Naveen Jain, who's a billionaire, Reed Tracy, the president and CEO of Hay House. They do over $100 million a year. Christopher Lochhead with a $4.5 billion exit with Mercury Interactive, and lots of folks that you've never heard of who are quietly just crushing it in these industries that you don't think are very glamorous or sexy, but 50 million here, 30 million there. And it's just like, man, it's crazy. It's amazing to hear about all of the different ways that you can get to eight figures and beyond.
I'm sure identified a couple things. You probably heard something consistently throughout it. Or is there a lesson that you've learned or taken away from your guests on the show that maybe kind of surprised you, or you didn't really think about?
Yeah, a few things actually. I mean, what comes to mind first is you can't get to 8 figures doing what you did to get to 7 figures. Like you almost have to break everything. And I don't want to say start over, because of course you don't want to kill the business, but you really have to break everything from the standpoint in terms of how you operate the business. And well, as it's been famously said, since Michael Gerber coined this whole concept of working, in your business versus working on your business, really to get to 7 figures, you're probably working in your business as some sort of technician or execution or et cetera. I mean, like you're very involved with it. But to get to 8 figures and beyond, you really have to lean on team. Like you can't do it alone, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I think trust is what comes into play there. You have to trust your instincts that you're making the right decisions. You obviously have to trust your people, but you also have to really trust the fact that you want to build a business of that size, right? I mean, on a lot of levels, it's much easier to run a solid 6-figure, 7-figure business that generates decent revenue for you and income for you than it is to run it. I mean, to run an 8-figure business is no small feat, and you just got to remember, is this something that do you actually want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
On paper, it seems glamorous and, oh yeah, I'd love to have a, $10 million plus business. But reality is it completely changes the scope of perhaps why you got into business in the first place.
Those are some great points there. And I'm a big believer that if you want to go from making 6 figures to 7 figures, you've got to grow mentally into that person. You can't do the same thing like you said before.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I think entrepreneurs are the biggest bottleneck in growth is we try to do it all ourselves, right?
Yeah. And reality is the other really important lesson that I hear consistently from our guests is that you have to just turn left when everybody else tells you to turn right. And that's really hard to do. It's amazing how many stories of the entrepreneurs that we bring on made a key pivot or a key move or focus in a very specific way that ran against what you might just call, common knowledge, like common sense to some extent. And of course you have to stay the course, right? I mean, that's a given. But a lot of what we've seen from the stories that people have shared is just this counterintuitive approach, and doing something that others just frankly wouldn't do, and that really has made all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that. Kind of like opening, dance club for 18-year-olds called the Pickle in Chicago.
The Funky Pickle, yes, exactly.
The Funky Pickle.
Yeah,
I love that story.
Club. That would be the club.
So you, San Diego's home now for you. You're diehard Chicago at heart, though, too. Correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And you've done, we were talking a little bit before we came on about some real estate development stuff and things that you've done. Why don't you share a little bit about some of the things you've learned over the years from doing some of those bigger projects as well, too?
Yeah. So I kind of snuck into the back door, so to speak, of real estate development when I back in '98, actually, when my wife and I bought our first place, our first home. I knew that I wanted to have some income, if possible, from building and live in that building. And in Chicago, 2 to 4 unit buildings are pretty commonplace. Yep. And so we found a building that, in hindsight, I mean, was just ridiculously inexpensive, but I guess that's what happens when you look back 20 years, right? So, but it was a 4-unit building, and we rented out 3 of the units and lived in one of the units. And it was a nice, pretty good size, 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom. I think it was a 1-bath unit that we lived in. and we rented out the other units, and we were making money every month. And it was just kind of like, well, this is super cool, right? I kind of dig on all this, and it was just nice not to have to worry about the mortgage, and everything was paid for. But I didn't really think about myself as a real estate developer at that point. We just wanted to live in our own home and have some income coming in. So that was kind of the first foray into that world. And at that point, I was still in the .com world. And the .com world was really booming. And then in March of 2000, when we actually had our S1 filed and we were ready to go public, that's when just the whole bottom fell out and everything imploded. And I had to walk away from that .com that I had spent 9 years building because, well, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is we couldn't go public, and we ran out of money, and I had a lot of differences of opinion with some of the new folks that we had brought in to take us to that promised land. And so basically in August of 2000, I was completely without a job, completely without any income except for what was coming in from that house. And I knew I had to do something pretty quick. And if you remember, Scott, that was around the time when the whole real estate thing started to take off, right? That first wave of just, anything you touch turned to gold as far as real estate was concerned. It was all, prices were escalating no matter what product it was. And I was looking around and seeing folks making money here and making money there in real estate. And I knew I had to do something. And it was just one of those things where if they could do it, I could do it, right? I mean, that was the mentality going into it. And the first project that I did was we bought a 7-unit apartment building and converted that building into condominiums. And so that was my first foray into development. And it's kind of funny at this point looking back, because I think I personally, as the developer, cleared just over $100,000, which, is good. But to do a 7-unit project and make $100,000, it's probably not a project I would take on today. But who knew, right? And so that was the first foray into that. And I went on and did office development and mixed use development and other condo projects. And the last project that I did in Chicago before I came to San Diego was we took an old 144,000 square foot concrete loft building on the near west side of Chicago and converted that into 68 residential loft apartments with 68 indoor parking spots and so on. So I'm actually still involved with that project to this day from an ownership perspective. But that was the last project that I did in Chicago, and now I'm getting the bug to do some things out here in San Diego now that I've got a little bit of my bearings, because it's you come into a town, man, it's hard to get your bearings.
It is, and San Diego and Chicago are completely different marketplaces for the most part. Foreclosure timeframes. I like to joke and call Chicago Crook County. Because I have made some money in Chicago and I've lost some money on some projects as well, with having to foreclose and taking forever to evict tenants. I've been sued in federal court from a tenant that wasn't even my tenant to begin with. So, yeah, I think I would much rather be investing in San Diego than I would in Chicago.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, and on the surface, and I've had similar experiences, but it's interesting because like I've taken over buildings that had Section 8 housing, and I've taken over buildings that had market rate housing and all. And, the people that you think are going to give you the hardest time, just for whatever reason, you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is going to be hard to get these guys out to be able to do what I want to do with this building. Oftentimes it's the people that you never think are going to give you a hard time that make it the most difficult for you.
Oh, that's the truth. That's the truth. In our line of business, we see that people that want to, since we're buying the debt, people that want to stay in their house and modify, and we try to bend over backwards to help them out, and they drag it out, and then they just end up foreclosing. And it's a proverbial tar baby a lot of times, and in real estate, you don't hit home runs all the time. You have some ones that do well, and then others you'll learn from, are a bit of a tuition, right?
Yeah. Well, the reality is I have done very well on some projects. And in 2006, 2007, 2008, when things got pretty rough again in that world, Man, I got hammered. You know, there were just looking back on some of the buildings that I had. I mean, I had a beautiful 50,000 square foot office building right in downtown Chicago in the River North area.
Mhm.
Just a beautiful heavy timber loft building. Electronic Arts, the EA, the video game maker,
Yeah.
they were our single tenant in that building. And so we had a triple net deal with that, so to speak. I mean, they basically paid for everything. We just owned the building. EA decided to close that headquarters. They paid a hefty sum to get out of there, but we couldn't lease it back up. And unfortunately, we ended up giving that one back to the bank. And that $4 million piece of property is probably about an $8 to $9 million building right now, and it's just like, yeah, it's a herder, and actually had to give back a couple other properties as well, some really nice pieces, and then some beautiful pieces as well that we just didn't have the capital to be able to sustain that downturn, and so kept some, lost some, sold some at a break even. And just looking back, it's just like, man, some of those properties, they're just awesome pieces of property that unfortunately I had to let go of. And like you said, you live and you learn.
But and I really appreciate you sharing that. I don't think enough people or enough entrepreneurs share the down. I mean, I think a lot of people see nothing but the good stuff. They don't see what's going on under the water. Maybe we're like ducks on top of the water. Maybe still, but underneath we're paddling like crazy to do a variety of different things.
Yeah.
And that's a kick in the balls when you have to go through that, several times. And
it is.
Well,
but it doesn't stop either, because every time you drive by that damn thing,
Is that why you moved to San Diego?
Right. Maybe. But it's true, I mean, it's like, it just, and especially since not most, but a lot of real estate developers or investors that I know put some blood, sweat, and tears into those properties, improving them, and oftentimes you take something that was just kind of meh and you make it beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got your heart into it, no matter how you slice it. I mean, people say don't get emotionally invested in this, that, and the other, but when you take something that wasn't that great and you make it into this beautiful piece of property, even though, it's just a piece of real estate, but it's more than that, I mean, it's no matter how you slice it, you get emotionally tied to these things. You just do.
Yeah. We call that the OTSC. So, oh, that's so cute. Whether it's a single family home or a apartment complex or mixed use or whatever, I agree. It's hard sometimes to keep your emotions out of it, but let's talk a little about that. Overcoming those hurdles. I mean, I've been through bad deals. A lot of people have been through deals. Not everybody jumps back into it.
Yeah.
Or not able to recover from that. What would you say has probably been the biggest help for you when you looking back now, a decade later? What were some of the things that helped you overcome those low points, to get back on your feet and get reinventing yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it were just that easy, but reality is sometimes you just got to wallow in it, I mean, especially if you take a big financial hit. I mean, it's hard, people, I don't think that people understand how hard it is, unless you're an entrepreneur, to actually make real money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to make $100,000, even though I'm making light of it in terms of, hey, that, wasn't a lot. Would I do that project today? Probably not. But, to make $100,000 on something, that's hard to do. For somebody to write you a check, it's not like you work 10 years and you make, this and you put away 100,000 over 10 years and you do something for a period of time, maybe 5 months, 6 months, whatever, cash out through a refinance or you sell the property or whatever it is, and you have a check for 100,000. I mean, like, it's hard to make money, like a serious amount of money, right? Like life-changing type money. It's hard to do that. And so the reality is, you gotta, to some extent, you gotta grieve. I mean, you gotta sit there and recognize the fact that I've just lost what some people won't even make in a lifetime. Right. And that hurts no matter how you slice it. So I do think you have to take an appropriate amount of time to grieve. And at some point, it could be a week later, it could be a day later, it could be 6 months later, it could be a year later. But just the human spirit is pretty resilient. And at some point, especially if you've got at least someone around you to give you that kick in the pants and just say, hey, all right, it happened, it sucks, but we got to move forward. Then you got to get back up on that horse. And, look, reality is that pain ever going to go away? Like I said, in terms of when you drive by it and you still have to see it. I don't think it ever completely goes away, because it becomes a game of, I should have known better. It becomes a game of, I could have done better. It becomes a game of, I had my ego too big, right? Like one of the properties that I'm referring to that we lost. I mean, I had an opportunity to sell that property and our partnership would have pocketed, I don't know, about $4 million. And I didn't think it was enough. And because I didn't take that deal, that was the last window of opportunity to really make any money in hindsight on that deal. And I mean, come on, man, $4 million, that's a lot of money, no matter who you are. I don't care if you're a billionaire, $4 million is still a lot of money, no matter how you slice it. And we let our egos get in the way, I think, in some cases where we have an opportunity to do something, but we think more of what it is than reality actually presents to us. And so that's where having someone who says, hey, you need to do that, whatever that is that you're thinking you don't need to do. So having that support system to run some of these things by, I think is huge, because it's that same support system that'll help pull you out when you feel like, I just can't do this anymore. That's
very, very true, and great insight on that stuff out there. Hope you guys are listening out there. Some of the great stuff that Steve is sharing out there this morning, whether you're listening to this live on Facebook or you're listening to this to iTunes, Stitcher, or any of the other podcast platforms that have been out there. So let's transition a little bit. You have put together an amazing event, and I was very honored that you invited me to the most recent New Media Summit here in Austin, Texas, my backyard. It's not often I get to attend an event in my backyard. Usually it's on the East Coast, the West Coast.
Yeah.
But I'd love to ask how you came up with the concept for New Media Summit. But for those that don't know, Steve puts on this amazing event. It's a 3-day event. And one of the biggest things that I want to do being a podcaster, and a lot of people out there are looking to help reinvent themselves, whether to get the word out on what they're doing, either locally or nationally or things like that. And I'm a big fan of podcasting. I think it's one of the final untapped First Amendment frontier for you to get out and say what you want to say and get the message up. But you have this amazing event where you bring in 150, people looking to get booked on shows or to boost their podcast for guests. And you spend literally 3 days and a lot more beforehand diving in and helping develop these entrepreneurs to help them with their message. So where did you come up with the concept for this, man? It's an awesome event and awesome way of really helping launch so many great podcasters and podcast guests.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So the New Media Summit, we did the first one in September of 2017, and we've since done 3 others. No, that's not true. 2 others, and our 4th one is coming up here in February of 2019. And the idea, it really came to me via a partnership that I had with a gentleman about 3 odd years ago or so. And when he came to me with this idea, which was different than what the New Media Summit became, he was talking about how trying to do something in the new media space, and everything was going on with influencer marketing at that point. And he and I both had a couple of people that we knew, so just folks that we both were friends with, who did an event that basically was kind of a pitch fest, so to speak, for traditional media. Like you would come to this event, and I'm happy to share the name of it. I love the Harrisons. I've learned under the Harrisons. So Steve and Bill Harrison have an event that they do called the National Publicity Summit, where they bring in radio and TV type people. And I've actually been to that event, and you can go there and you can pitch the radio and TV people and hopefully get booked on to their shows. Now, the number of bookings on those shows are pretty few and far between, but some people get booked on CBS This Morning and that sort of thing. So it's a great event. Been to that event. My friend and I were talking. Again, we were thinking about things from a different standpoint in terms of this whole new media world and influencer marketing and so on. And I said to him at the time, I said, I don't really like the idea that you're kicking out for that, but let me throw this by you. What if we did an event that was similar to what the Harrisons do with the National Publicity Summit, but we do it in the new media space, and we bring in podcasters, and we give podcasters the opportunity to find great guests for their shows, and we give guests the opportunity to get booked on shows. And unfortunately, that partnership fell apart for various reasons, but I still thought that the idea was really, really good. And because I've been podcasting for as long as I've been podcasting, and I know how many applications we get for people to be on Reinvention Radio or Beyond Eight Figures now, I knew that the demand was there for people to get booked on shows, because I look at podcasts really as like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of free stages, right? So if you're a speaker or you've got a mission and message to share or whatever, you need visibility. You need to be able to get that message out to the masses. And to do it through advertising, it can be very, very expensive. So how can you get no cost visibility and share your mission and message with the masses without having to come out of pocket? And one of the most effective ways to do that is through being a guest on podcasts. And so knowing that I've got just, all of these folks coming to us and saying, hey, we'd love to be on your show. And then talking to some of my podcaster friends and knowing that they can continually get inundated with people saying, hey, we'd love to be on your show. I thought it would be a good match for the attendees and the podcasters to come together and give the attendees the opportunity to pitch them on the spot and get booked. And so that's really how the New Media Summit was born, was just my talking to a few podcaster friends and just saying, hey, if I put together this event, would you open yourself up to sharing best practices and monetization strategies and really how you're leveraging the power of new media? And would you be willing to accept pitches from potential guests? You're under no obligation to book them, but if you like them, let's find you some cool folks who you probably wouldn't otherwise meet. And before I knew it, we got 40 podcasters to say yes. And I wanted to keep it somewhat intimate so that everyone had an opportunity to pitch. And so we capped it at 150 attendees, and that's been the format ever since. It's 3 days, 150 attendees, and 40 icons of influence, as we call them. Much, you're one of them. I mean, you were there in Austin, and you'll be back at our next event as well, man. So looking forward to having you there. But yeah, that's the origin story of the New Media Summit.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. Literally, it's kind of like American Idol. You've got the 7 or 8 icons on the stage. People give their 2-minute pitch, and you spend a lot of time working with the attendees to come up with their elevator pitch as well, and we give a lot of feedback to those that are pitching, and it's the whole thing. We got our backs turned. If we like the pitch, we'll turn around and book you, try to get you on. And it's been influential on what we've done here, because we've had Devi Adea on here, we had Phoebe Mrochek, we had Matt Wolfier on here, we got you.
Yeah.
We had our boy, oh my gosh, Sean Douglas is a keynote for our most recent Note Camp as well. And then, of course, brought so many great people together for International Podcast Day on September 30th, too. It's just been, it's a great network. And a lot of those people have become really great friends that we look forward to hanging out with. And that's the thing about 3 days, round tables, rotating tables in the morning and the afternoons. You can't be an introvert. You can be an introvert, but you ain't gonna work to hide by yourself, right?
Yeah, I don't let you hide, man. There's and that's one of the things that makes the event really, really unique is all 150 attendees at some point over the 3 days, they all have the opportunity to get the microphone and take center stage and speak in front of 190 people that are there, 150 attendees, 40 icons. Actually, it's more because we got vendors, and then we actually live stream the event as well. So and we get thousands of people watching on the live stream. So yeah, everybody gets to take the mic, everyone gets to pitch, and I'm really proud to say that we've got a 100% track record of people coming to the summit and getting booked. So everybody who comes to the summit, again, we've got a 100% track record of this. Everyone who comes to the summit leaves with, at least one booking in hand, and most leave with often dozens of visibility opportunities. One woman got booked on 33 shows at the last summit.
Yeah, and you never know who's in the audience too, besides just the icons out there as well. That's one of the big things I think that people take away, is that we get so used to, if we're working working in a career, we have a job. Maybe we're not the pitch man. Maybe we're not the person that's going out there to promote ourselves. And to start to promoting your book or your training or your show, you've got to take some speaker training. You got to spend some time developing a little bit of those skills, working, flexing that muscle to build it up.
Yeah.
And you do a great job beforehand, working with them, helping them with their media, their one sheets as well.
Yeah, we give them, we do 4 pre-event training sessions before the summit so that people can practice their pitch and really understand how to create a pitch that works, right? And it's hard, it's hard just condensing who you are and what you do and attract interest in that in 2 minutes, right? And that's what we do, is we give people 2 minutes on the mic to share their story and even leave some time for feedback. And you'd be amazed at where those pitches can go in just a fairly short period of time. And some folks will bring you to tears, and other folks will bring you to your feet and applaud. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, we spend we give you 4 pre-event training sessions to get you ready. We complete your media one sheet for you. So my team actually builds that for you. And it is a unique event from the standpoint of, there are no iron curtains, there's no VIP rooms, there's no green rooms. The icons like Scott and the other podcasters and myself and others are all right there with you. We all hang together, we all learn together, we all dance together, we all break bread together. Lunch is included every day. And so it's just a unique environment where you walk out of there after 3 days having developed real relationships with people that you may not have ever met before in your life before you walked in those doors. So like you said, I mean, you've walked out of there with real relationships. The attendees walk out of there with real relationships. And yeah, there's something magical about what happens over those 3 days. Yeah.
And you have to give kudos to you. It comes across, it's very apparent you've got a passion for helping people succeed, because you open up the kimono. If they have a question about the event or booking or speaking or sales and things like that, you answer them, and no holds barred on sharing the information. So it gives people a lot of insight. And like you said, not only getting booked, but monetization and then other opportunities there. So like a couple of the biggest things I took away refining my pitch. I learned a lot from everybody pitched, and I refined my pitch. It's helped me get booked. It's helped me actually add some investment club meetings across the country.
Awesome.
From what I learned there as well. So very, very valuable. The event, you have the next one's going to be in Palm Harbor, Florida, right? February, 21st through the 23rd?
Yeah, exactly. So just outside of Tampa. We're doing it at a place called the Innisbrook Resort. Do you golf, Scotty?
I drink cold beer occasionally, yes.
And get interrupted by a walk with the club. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so we're actually thinking about maybe doing an NMS Open before it starts there. So yeah, Innisbrook is a really nice golf and tennis resort and the whole nine. So, bring the fam, let the fam hang out and have some fun while you're hanging out with us at the New Media Summit, having some fun. But yeah, Innisbrook Resort, just outside of Tampa, February 21st through the 23rd.
Mm-hmm. Got a question here from one of our online guests. What's the tuition to attend the New Media Summit?
Well, I'll tell you what. Send me an email and we'll hook you up. I mean, the published price is $29.97. So if you went to newmediasummit.net, you'll see the published price there of $29.97. But as a friend of Scott's, send me an email, steve@steveolsher.com. So SteveOlsher. So steve@steveolsher.com. and send me an email, and we'll take care of you as a friend of Scotty's.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that, but I know
not free, but we'll take care of you.
Oh, yeah, not free. Exactly. Yeah, let's get that straight. I totally expected to be a charge because it's free has no value for most people. Free has no value for most people. And the training and the information provided there, what would you say is the biggest mistake you see from people looking to, get themselves booked on, or pitch themselves to other people? What's the biggest mistake?
Yeah. They just try to go too wide. And they want to get booked on every show, but reality is, and what we teach people is, for instance, if you go to newmediasummit.net, you'll see a list of all the podcasters that will be there and their shows and whatnot. Do your homework, listen to their shows, make sure that it's a fit, make sure you like them. Scotty's not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So even though on the surface, you might be like, oh, I got to get on that show. And then if you listen to it and you go, like that guy, that happens, right? So listen to the shows, create a hit list, so to speak, of the shows that you really want. And of course, this applies to whether you come to the New Media Summit or not, right? Just create a hit list of the shows that you really want to be on. And look, it's different when you're pitching someone one-on-one. If you're pitching someone one-on-one, like you're sending an email to Scott to say, hey, I'd love to be on your show, then one of the best things you can do, and one of the things that I recommend is, Scott gets inundated with requests, just like all of our other podcaster friends. And so one of the things that I really like to do is just have a killer subject line that gets their attention, right? Like, you got it wrong in episode 286, Scott. Here's why. Like something that shows that you've done your homework, you've listened, you get their attention. And then in that pitch, you can reference, hey, in episode 286, you said X, Y, and Z. Well, here's my take on that subject, right? So you're bringing your own unique slant to the table. Scotty appreciates it because you've listened to the show. And if you kick in the fact that, hey, even though you got it wrong, I still left you a 5-star review. Here's a screenshot of that, right? Then he's going to be like, oh man, they rated, they reviewed, right? So you got to get into the mind of the podcaster. And if you're doing it one-on-one, just obviously make it so that it's geared towards that particular show. In the New Media Summit environment where you're pitching everyone, I still think you have to be clear on the message. If you can speak to business audiences, and you can speak to personal development audiences, and you can speak to health and fitness, and you can speak to spirituality, it just becomes too broad, and it becomes hard for us to know whether or not you'd be a good fit. And it becomes hard for us to know how we can help you, because if it's not a fit for us, we can introduce you to others who have shows that you might be a good fit for. So again, just don't go, that's long answer, Scotty, but just it too broad. I think that's what ends up happening.
No, I think you're 100% right. And it's not too broad of an answer, because it hits the nail right in the head of narrowing down your niche and having basically different messages for different shows. One message doesn't work across the board. It waters down what you're trying to do, and you'll lose out on that. But that's one other thing that I think you mentioned that is really prevalent at New Media Summit, that you keep everybody together. People get a chance to really develop and talk with other people a little bit longer than in the one-on 100 or one-on 190 versus one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that was prevalent throughout the event. People say, oh, I didn't like your pitch right now, but I met you earlier throughout the weekend. I want to book you on my show anyway.
Yeah. And that happens actually quite a bit, and we've had some folks who are really seasoned speakers come to the New Media Summit, and they said that, that 2 minutes of having to pitch on who they are and what they do and why they'd be a good guest on a show, so to speak, right? That 2 minutes was the most nerve-wracking presentation that they've ever had to give. And reality is, it's hard, and it can be nerve-wracking. So what often you find, as Scott is saying here, is you may not crush the pitch in the way that you really want to, but the truth is that you're going to have lots of time over those 3 days to develop real relationships with the influencers that are there, and you'll get into other conversations. So yes, the pitch is kind of the pinnacle, so to speak, of your opportunity to get booked and to put yourself out there in front of all the live streamers who are watching, the thousands of people from across the world and so on. But in terms of relationships, you'll find that a lot of those relationships are developed and those pitches are accepted, or the hey, I get to know who you are, and I didn't love the pitch, but I love you kind of thing. That all happens at various points during the 3 days. What are you looking for over there, man?
I'm looking for your book, because that's what I heard that earlier, and I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, you realize no one can hear you when you've got your back turned to the screen and the microphone.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find it. I just made the whole faux pas of as a host there. I had it out here earlier because I've read it. Love the book. Talk a little about the book, Steve, that you wrote, and that it's awesome. Sorry, I apologize, but I'm trying to bring it up here to help promote it a little.
Hold on. You talk for 2 seconds.
Yes. So Steve's got such a passion to find what your why is and what your what is out there that he wrote an amazing book out there. He's getting a copy.
Right, I got it.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. And I actually
here, let me help you. There we go. Is that the one you're looking for?
That's it. What is
that the one you're looking for? All right, sweet. So for those of you on audio right now, I am holding up a copy of What is Your What? Discover the one amazing thing you were born to do. So yeah, that's the book I put on the New York Times list in 2013. You actually read it? Really? I didn't even know.
Yeah. Every gives me a book, I read it, because I am a massive reader. A little bit here, or I'll especially flying and things like that. I spend a lot of time reading. So yeah, it's a great book, man.
Yeah, man. So coming full circle in terms of what we started this conversation around as far as reinvention is concerned, no matter where you are on the path, you can go further, or you can go in a different direction on a dime, right? So this book, What is Your What, really helps you gain clarity on how you're naturally wired to excel. It's really the book that I needed, because I've struggled with that question, or that phraseology didn't really exist before I wrote the book, but I've struggled with the concept of, how am I naturally wired to excel? Who am I most compelled to serve? What is my core gift, right? And how am I going to share that gift? And that's what the book, What is Your What, does, is it really gives you an understanding of what your core gift is, and then being able to identify the primary vehicle that you'll use to share that gift, and then really who the people are, right? Who are the people that you're most compelled to serve? And it's the gift, the vehicle, and the people that make up the What is Your What framework. And I'm fortunate to be able to say that, the book has helped tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people over the years now. And yeah, if you're trying to figure out what's next, or what maybe puts more fire in your soul, it's a great place to start.
It's a great place to start, and it's one of the great things. I think it's a great book that everybody should be reading out here, especially with it being the time of year, the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019, just around the corner. It's a phenomenal book. Guys, go out, buy it, read it, share it. Steve doesn't take enough credit for how good a book it is. Honestly, he's very humble about it.
We can make it even easier. Just go to whatisyourwhat.com. So just go to whatisyourwhat.com, and you can grab a free copy of the entire book. So we actually give away the whole book.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Well, Steve, I want to say thank you so much for sharing such an amazing nuggets today, sharing about your past and reinventing yourself, the ups and downs and things that happen out there. I look forward to hanging with you here in just over, just in about 60 days, I guess. It's
3
days,
something
like that.
Crazy. Yeah. February, end of February. So yeah, getting closer every day.
Yeah. Once again, guys, highly recommend the event. And you guys know I don't usually recommend something unless I've been there and used it and found value from it. But you want to check it out. The New Media Summit, February 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Like Steve said, and was so generous to do, drop Steve an email at steve@steveolsher.com, and he'll hook you up with a nice friends and family discount, I guess you could say.
Yeah, man. Happy to do it.
But and then also go to the book site as well, and you can download your free copy of that. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us here on the Note Closer Show. We appreciate it so much, man.
Yeah, Scotty. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, bud. Well, take care. We'll see you later. All right.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Note Closer Show here. Go out, take some action. Don't worry about the hurdles that are going to happen to all of us. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Sometimes, like Steve said, you've got to turn left when everybody else tells you to turn right. So go out, make something happen, and hopefully we'll see you at the New Media Summit. If not, we'll see you all at the top, everybody.